you know, we can only be the change that we seek, right? So you see that you see it over Instagram and on quote cards and stuff like that, but actually like getting into it, what it actually means is, you know, it stops us judging others, it encourages self-reflection, and you know, it stirs us into action. So yes, I want to be a conduit for change. I want to speak up and feel like I don't like feeling uncomfortable at all. Like I spoke up in a meeting fairly recently and called somebody out on language that was used that I thought was derogatory towards women. And I did it. It was awful. Like the feeling that I felt inside was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've spoken to somebody who is more senior than me. And I've told them that that was not appropriate and maybe I shouldn't have done it. And, you know, I worried about it so much. And then a few hours later, I was like, no, that was the right thing to do.
If anyone else joins late, I can let them in. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. Honestly, it means so much. This is our very first Women in Property webinar, and hopefully one of many to come. So yeah, such a pleasure to be here. We've got 4 incredible women leading in the property industry, and I'm really grateful that they've all been able to give up their time today. So as a little bit of a welcome and a little bit of an introduction, my name is Zoe Jones. Background is PR, marketing. I'm also a life coach, yoga teacher, got many hats. I've worked for large corporations such as Warner Brothers, Channel 4, 20th Century Fox, and also smaller independent businesses. And now I am Director of Jobs for Women. I'm just going to let someone else into the chat. Multitasking. So Women in Property, as I said, is the first of a series of webinars. So we're bringing together women in industries. We're going to do all of the STEM industries. And the agenda for today is a little intro from me. I'm not going to talk for too long. And then we're just going to hand over to the panel, who are going to introduce their background, maybe talk about why they got into property, and then we're just going to launch straight into a Q&A. So a little bit about Jobs for Women. So Jobs for Women was an idea which formed many years ago, really early stages of my career. I remember I worked for a big corporation film company, and I was pulled aside by a manager who had just had a promotion. She was really happy, but she pulled me into the stairwell and said, nobody talks about salaries, no one talks about what they earn, but I just want you to know that if I was a guy, I'd have been offered another 10k on this promotion and this salary. And it was like my first like taste of the gender pay gap. And I think it's when I became really passionate about it. And I think the idea has just been forming while I've been working in PR and marketing. And as a woman, I think a lot of people can relate. During my career, I've been made to feel inadequate because of my gender. I've had comments, sexist remarks, pretty much, unacceptable behaviour. So I feel like it's well overdue for us to come together. And the webinars, I feel really passionate about us coming together and sharing our stories and sort of, standing together to make change, and also to really help younger women coming into our industries, to let them know that they can have any career that they want, and this behaviour that they're potentially experiencing, and not everyone does, but, letting them know that it's unacceptable. So a little bit about Jobs for Women. We're a community of like-minded women who share attributes and passions. We've got a weekly podcast and a newsletter. I've got 2 screens, by the way, so if I'm looking over to the side, that's why. And then we've got a jobs board where we help equitable companies reach untapped female talent. And then, of course, we've got our webinars, which I've just talked about. So a little bit, I can't not talk about the gender pay gap. There's loads and loads of statistics. I'm not going to read out everything that's on the screen. As a general introduction, we know that there's a glaring gender pay gap, and that's widened following COVID. We know that the widest gap falls in the upper quartile, which is where the highest paid positions in the industry fall. Men hold just over 60% of the upper quartile, with women just under 40. And specifically in property, there's alarming statistics, honestly, when I was doing the research for today. But, you know, just to pull out a couple, when women occupy just 30% of senior management positions in estate agencies, 13% of UK surveyors are female, and 30% of women take up senior leadership roles in property. So as well as poor female representation across all levels, the data shows us that women are more likely to feature in part-time support roles, and in contrast, men are holding the managerial positions. And I know that change is happening, but it's something that we need to talk about and recognise and share our experiences with it. So another reason that I found for an unequal gender balance is that property and construction services have tended to lag behind in other industries. I know I spoke to Ellie about that, talking about flexible working, especially in a estate agency. And it just feels like women in the workplace need to fight a little bit harder to be heard, especially in historically male-dominated industries. So I could go on, like I said, but I would like to introduce you to our incredible panel. So we have got Beth, Hannah, myself, Lida and Ellie on our panel today. So if it's all right with you, Beth, I'm going to hand over, and I just thought we could all just intro ourselves. I've done my intro, but yeah, just chat a little bit about your experience, how you got into property, and anything else that you want to say.
Sure, yeah, so hello everyone, morning, I'm Beth. I am a senior land manager for McCarthy and Stone Retirement Living. My role basically is to find and negotiate and purchase land for McCarthy Stone to develop new retirement living developments. So I actually got into property via my dad suggesting that it might be a good kind of route for me to look into when I was finishing up college and looking at what I might want to do for my degree. Ultimately, I ended up doing a building surveying degree, which I really enjoyed actually, but there was a severe lack of females on the course. So of a cohort of about 50 students, maybe 40 students, across the 4 years that we did the course, there were maybe four females, and that included one person who kind of left halfway through. So yeah, I think it's really important that we try and engage with girls and, you know, younger people looking to potentially go into more male dominated industries. It seems like we don't really encourage those sorts of degrees or those sorts of career paths when we're looking at careers fairs and things like that at colleges. I certainly didn't have anybody from a university saying, you know, that there are all these construction related degrees or, you know, development degrees, property things that you can look into when they were doing careers fairs at my college or at uni. So yeah, I think it's really important that we have these conversations up front and we just try and encourage more diversity in the workforce. I think you mentioned it earlier, Hannah, that having another female there or somebody you know, a little bit more on your level when you're looking as a student to go into potentially a new business, that's such a comfort, and it really does give you the kind of security that, you know, my differences might be celebrated rather than seen as something that's holding me back. So yeah, I think that's largely the reason why I want to be on the podcast and on the webinar to talk about sort of getting younger people and encouraging females into the industry.
Amazing, thanks, Beth. And you talked about how your dad encouraged you, and our mutual friend, I know that was similar, and Hannah as well. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because to be honest, I didn't even know those kind of properties, even though my dad was a civil engineer. It's weird. It was like we didn't talk. Maybe it wasn't because it was an interest or a passion, but that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Beth. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah now. So there you go. Take it away, Hannah.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Windle. I'm a senior quantity surveyor working for a main contractor called United Living. I work for the new homes pillar of the business, so that's basically focusing on all the residential construction projects we do. For those of you that probably don't know what a quantity surveyor is, because I know I didn't know when I was first applying for it, it's a role where you sort of manage all the costs and the contracts in relation to construction projects. People tend to call it like an accountant for buildings. So it's kind of a little bit like that. Again, as we've just said, so my stepdad was the one who introduced me into the sort of property construction sort of career path. I was looking at options to do for university degrees, had no idea what I wanted to do. And he was like, why don't you look into quantity surveying? I think you'd be good at that. So he was a project manager at the time based on construction sites. So he actually took me into work for a week's work experience. So I got to sit with the other surveyors and the commercial team there. And then I thought, oh yeah, it's quite good that I actually really like it. So then after that experience, I went on to apply for quantity surveying degrees and went to university, did that. And that's how I've kind of ended up as I am today. So yeah, it's kind of, I never knew what sort of roles were available. You don't really discuss them. I think there's this stigma around construction and property that it's a male dominated industry. It's all outside work. There's not very many professional roles that you can get within the industry, where it's completely all wrong. And it's just sort of my intention of being here and with other projects I do as well is sort of giving people the information and giving them the wide variety of roles that are available, which will then encourage people to apply for these roles or to study for these roles, because it tends to be men falling into them because they think construction outside, I want to do this, I want to do that, and influences, whereas it isn't that at all. So just making the information available for people and giving them an experience of what it's like in the property world, because it's not as scary as everyone thinks it is.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks so much, Hannah. And then I will hand over to Lida. Lida, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name's Lida. I am head of legal for UK and Republic of Ireland at EG Group. I've been doing that role since March, actually, but before that, I was a senior legal counsel in-house, and before that, a real estate specialist working in private practice. So my career journey has been definitely the majority property, and I've still got a lot of colleagues that are in the property industry, and I've spent a lot of my junior and mid-career in that industry. How did I get into it? Not a hugely interesting story, if I'm completely honest. For those who don't know, when you are training as a solicitor, you do 4 seats of 6 months, and they cover various areas that the law firm will offer. I actually was training during the recession, not this one, a few years ago, which essentially meant that my opportunity to do a variety of seats was vastly reduced, because as we see now, lots of industries are slowing down, and you'll get an increase in litigation, but then the M&A deals will slow down, the more big commercial deals will also slow down. So that my experience as a trainee was kind of very litigant focused, but actually I knew that I was a deal maker. I was not somebody that really wanted to be in the weeds, so to say, with litigation. And the only seat that I had done was real estate. Luckily for me, I actually really enjoyed it. And one of the reasons I enjoyed it was I could go out into the real world and look at the results of my work. So I worked a lot in retail and leisure. So I could go into Manchester Arndale and see a store that I'd worked on and feel a sense of pride. And I could see like the fruits of my labour, essentially. So not a hugely interesting story or particularly inspirational as to how I went into property. But yeah, what I guess I did notice was when I was in university and law school, I did a law degree and then I went to law school. there was lots of women, like more women than there were men. Again, when I joined my firm as a trainee, and then I joined a different firm on qualification, there was a lot of women in those junior roles, like, and you know, super smart women. And then what you did see was at the more senior level, definitely more men. And I suppose didn't take a huge amount of notice of it then. And I think as my career has progressed, I've become more aware. And I think for women in property, in the legal sector, I think the time that really is the pinch point that I have noticed, and you know what, it's not even just in property, it's like the whole legal sector, I would say, that when women are going from that, you know, mid-junior level to senior position, lots of things in their life tend to change. And speaking with my like counterparts, that's the real struggle, because it's juggling so many different things at the same time. And you see your male counterparts not really having any difference in their progression of their career. And it's a fact of life, right? You know, we birth children. But I guess it's how, once women are back in the office, how do we then support them? And I'm certainly in a position now where that is my main goal. How do I support the women in my team, and also support people in the wider teams that actually, you know, like we can help you, we can work together, we can make this work, we can be the change. So anyway, I'll stop talking. But
no, that was yeah, really interesting. So interesting. There's a lot that we can talk about returning to the office and supporting women, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in the Q&A. So thank you, Lida. I'm just going to hand over to Ellie now. So welcome, Ellie.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellie Rees. I run an estate agency. We kind of shorthand call ourselves an ethical estate agent. I kind of like alternative better, but then that rings of sort of crystals and Stonehenge. So I'm told by my marketing person we have to stay ethical. I have no qualifications in property whatsoever. I basically had no experience in property. I don't even think I really understood like what a mortgage was or what interest rates were, or didn't understand any of the language or jargon around selling and buying homes. I certainly had never owned a property myself when I started. I come from the arts and academia. I have a fine art master's. So I did go to college, but nothing to do with property at all. And actually, I was saying earlier to Beth and Hannah how it's very difficult to recruit graduates into a estate agency because it's a completely unregulated industry, pretty much. And you don't need any kind of qualification. At the moment, you don't need any kind of qualification to do the job. So lots of people fall into it, either sort of by accident or by financial imperative or whatever it might be. I was working as a practicing artist, and I went on a house viewing for my mum, and I met an estate agent on the viewing who I fancied, basically, is the truth of the matter. It's a sort of romance story rather than a professional one. I asked him out on a date. He said yes. I was pregnant about 12 weeks later, and now he's my husband, and we've been together for a decade and have a family. But the truth of the matter is that he was working for a large corporate franchise at the time, and was sort of pretty miserable, and went to great lengths to explain to me that he wasn't an estate agent really, and he wasn't like a conventional estate agent, didn't fit the stereotype of an estate agent, which we all know well and probably loathe more than we love. And said, look, I really can't keep doing this. He'd worked for lots of corporates, some small independents, kind of the whole gamut, and was miserable because there really was, and still is, quite a negative sort of toxically masculine culture to a state agency. It's quite a difficult industry to be part of if you're a female leader. And he said, look, I'll do it, but I'll only do it if you do it with me and we set up our own shop and just try to eradicate and identify those kind of negative cultural stereotypes within the industry. And I sort of said, yes, but I'll only do it for 2 years because I'm an artist, really. And then I've got to get back to my practice. And of course, 9 years later, I got the bug and here I am. And now we're still doing it. So that's how I fell into it.
That's a great story. And you met your husband. That's amazing. And then turned it into a career. That's fantastic. Welcome. So welcome to our panel. Thank you so much, guys, for those intros. We're going to go straight onto the Q&A. So like I said at the beginning, if you've got any questions, you can unmute yourself, drop it in the chat. You can raise your hand. We've had some questions in, like I said, so I'm just going to launch straight into them. I'll direct them at panel members, but we can all just jump in and have a chat and add our thoughts. So first question, what is the biggest challenge you face in the workplace as a woman and how do you personally deal with it? So if I can go to Hannah for this one.
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest challenge is in my industry in particular, there is no female role models. So as soon as I'd finished university, I'd gone straight into work, got a trainee quantity surveying job. And I actually looked at the structure of my sort of hierarchy of the commercial department. And I was literally the most senior female within that hierarchy. And it was my first year of working. And this is like a big corporate contractors. It wasn't like it was sort of a small one. There were hundreds of people working in that department, but I was the most senior female and I literally just started in my world of work. So I think when you're young and impressionable like that, you think, well, can I not do it? Why has no one else done it? So if no other woman's been able to get into those senior roles, then what is it about it? Does that mean I can't push for it or I can't go for it and go for these promotions and things? So I think that's something that is one of the biggest challenges, because until we get more of a structure within the senior leadership team and have more females in there, it sort of impacts the progression of some of the junior people coming through, because it impedes them succeeding because there's no role models there. So I think that's really difficult. And people like everyone on the call today, I bet everyone does something. I know at my work, so I form communities and groups with all the different females within our business, because there's not a lot of us. So if you can all get together, discuss and share your experiences, share tips on how to sort of go for promotion. And if there's younger people coming through, I'll mentor them and say, you can do this, you can go for this, and probably push them in a way that they've not had that sort of influence before. So I think that is a big challenge, but if we all work together, then there is a way out of it, and it will change eventually, I'd like to say. But we just all need to sort of support everyone else and help them push for where they need to be and get to their aspirations, career aspirations.
Sounds like you're paving the way there, Hannah.
I'm trying. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And the more that you sort of read into it now, role models, it is key. And not only is a role model having someone to look up to, but having women in leadership affects the culture of the organization, which then has a knockdown effect. And
absolutely, yeah.
So well done but it does make you wonder if you're there acting as like even a mentor that is an unofficial mentor. It's like, when you joined, who was there to support you? So well done.
And even in things like, meetings where there's 10 men and just you, the only woman, can sometimes be a bit intimidating, and you need to sort of help people feel more confident in them situations and think they're not scary. It's and the less scary they get, the more women will get sort of into working in these industries. But it's been a struggle, but I think
that's a really interesting one about the meeting thing. I was chatting, my husband works for PwC and in cyber, and they often chat about, like being the only woman. And Beth, I've spoken to you about that before, like walking into an event space or a room and it being full of men, and it does, for some of us, it can be intimidating, can't it?
I think it can be difficult depending on like language use. I think we'll come on to it later, but addressing a whole room or a meeting room when there is a female there, or regardless of whether there's a female there or not, addressing the room as gents. I get that all the time. Morning, gents, and you're like, I'm not a gent. Can we just not?
Yeah,
I've done that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Do you think that there's...
Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
No, I was just thinking, because it's similar in the C-suites and the boards in estate agency as well. Certainly the most visible ones and the most corporate ones, and basically they're majority white men, and we know that from data about the FTSE 100 companies. And there's that brilliant statistic, isn't there, that there's more UK FTSE 100 CEOs called John than there are women. Brilliant, like everyday sexism project stat. But I wonder if there's one CEO of a big agency called Verona Frankish who runs Yopa, and she's been brought in sideways. So she hasn't done what you're doing, Hannah, which is like starting at the bottom as a graduate and going, oh my God, there's nobody above me. Like nobody has forged this path for me. And it's going to take so many years and so many decades for the culture to change, whereby that leadership team at the top, that board, is going to be people who've come up, because that's all been men for the past however long, since the 50s or whatever, since the Victorian years. She's come sideways. So she's come from fashion and retail, but she's perfectly got her place at the table, because her transferable skills and her experience and her skill set means that she can run an estate agency. And I wonder if actually we've got to just sort of think about recruitment more creatively in that way, in terms of the leadership teams, and bringing people in that kind of more lateral way, rather than this sort of very actually patriarchal kind of hierarchical way, which is you have to start at the bottom and therefore you can only get to the top by climbing that ladder, rather than being more sort of imaginative about it, which is what team do we need? How does that need to look to make this company more diverse, happier, more productive, and therefore actually more profitable?
Yeah, really interesting. Really, really interesting. Thank you for that, ladies. So next question that came through, I don't know if this was in the Facebook group or email. Someone wanted to know the changes that you might have specifically noticed on the whole from starting your career, and if there have been any changes, both positive and negative. So Beth, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so I think throughout my time since having left uni, I think I've definitely noticed some positive changes. Certainly some companies are definitely more engaged with trying to diversify their workforce. I think certain businesses are really embracing it. So things like International Women's Day, making something of that, within your team, and actually celebrating things, that females have that we do that other people don't, and trying to make a positive out of what traditionally has been quite a negative sort of thought. So I know the business that I'm working for now, McCarthy Stone, they actually have a women's network. So they meet on a regular basis. It's like a safe place where people can go and discuss any challenges that they're having, and get a bit of mentorship from colleagues. And they are definitely a business who are engaging in things like that, and I do think that made a big kind of difference to my thought process and my decision making process on whether or not to take the role, and whether this business was one for me, because they're so outwardly promoting it, and they're happy to have those conversations and discuss where perhaps could we be better, what changes could we make, things like promoting this webinar. The business have been really, really good about that, and I think they're the changes that I've seen personally. Certainly when I was leaving uni, there was no talk of businesses doing things like women's networks or International Women's Day. So that's definitely a positive change. In terms of negative changes, I think it's a difficult one, because I think the negativity sometimes around diversity, it's been there for a long time. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a change. I don't think there's been an uptick in it. I think it's definitely something that we're all becoming more aware of. And certainly myself, I feel more empowered and more like I have a voice, that I can highlight issues, you know, where you think, actually, like I mentioned before, the gents thing, I've definitely mentioned that to colleagues in, you know, more recent years, whether that's just to do with my confidence growing or whether it's to do with the support that I receive, you know, outwardly. I don't know, but definitely feel that we have more of a voice now. Still got a long way to go, but we definitely have more of a voice, which is nice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beth. Anyone got anything else to add in terms of positive or negative changes? Don't worry if not.
I'd kind of just like to echo what Beth is saying then about, you know, not knowing whether when you call someone out using the word, you know, using like gents to address a room or guys, like I used to use that a lot, like hi guys. Now I'm always trying to be like hi team, like and trying to be and trying to promote that language and explain why I'm using that language. But what I would say is, yeah, it probably is a bit of confidence in ourselves as we get a bit older. And, you know, generally, I don't know if this is true for anyone else, but as I've grown older, I've become more sure of myself and who I am. So, and that leads me to what are my core values? So what am I going to stand up for? Like, what am I willing to put my, you know, whether I'm full of anxiety when I'm saying it and I'm shaking, my voice is shaking. But yeah, I do think the receiver of that feedback though, their reaction is changing. So, you know, if somebody at work says, oh yeah, the gents at blah blah blah, and I'm like, you know that there's women working there as well, right? Like, oh yeah, sorry, I shouldn't say that. And you know, you're right, Lida. And you know, it's just it doesn't have to be like a super like you should not say that. It can be like, you know, lighthearted, just reminding people about the use of language. And I think the more people that do it, I mean, choose the way you say it, because, you know, you have to look at who's going to be receiving that information. But I think using your voice just a little bit will make changes. It's the ripple effect, right? Like making a small change can, if someone sees you doing it, they might do it. And it's not just women. Like a guy can call another guy out, or a guy can call a woman out on it. Like, let's encourage that like trust and confidence in each other, that it's okay to speak out and say what we think is right.
It's being brave enough, isn't it, to sort of stick your head above the parapet on those small issues, which are really, really small, but they're really fundamentally important as well. And I think you're right, Lida. You feel as you grow older and you gain an experience, certainly for me, because I had come from a different industry that was very, very different and actually much more inclusive. You know, for example, calling yourself a feminist within the arts is like de rigueur. Calling yourself a feminist within a state agency, everyone's like, what? You know, sort of. So it was that shift in culture. But you know, as you get older, and I think also if you're working for yourself, it makes it easier because you've got less to lose because you're your own boss, right? I understand that position of privilege, but it's kind of like, what have I got to lose? Like, pretty much nothing. It's really important that I call this small thing out. And you're right, it's really important how you do it. Sometimes I feel disheartened that I have to change my delivery and make myself less angry and kind of rageful. But I also understand that that's really, really important as well, because you have to frame something in a certain way. There's no point alienating the people that you want to come on board and help you do something.
Yeah.
You know, there's a brilliant book called Why Men Win at Work by Jill Whitty Collins, and she was very high up in Procter and Gamble, and when she discusses men, she's like, you know, we need them on board. So this is about bringing everybody with us. And so but that grassroots stuff is really where it begins, and we know that because the internet helps us do that. And it's so, you know, you can galvanize marches and huge campaigns just from your bedroom by doing something really, really small. I think that's absolutely spot on.
I just want to share a story actually, because it sort of echoes what you've both said there. So a lot of the time when I'm sat in the office at work, I'm the only female, and people come in, assume I'm the receptionist, and come to me to photocopy things. Now, when I was younger, I never used to say anything, because I was like, oh, it'll take me 10 seconds, it'll be fine. But now I've got older and I've started saying, oh, sorry, I'm not the most junior person in the office. So-and-so's over there, they'll photocopy it for you. And people are mortified that they've said it, but sometimes they need that reminder that they've made this subconscious assumption, and they need to make sure that they're not making them assumptions. And just a little reminder for people, you can say it in a really nice way. Oh, sorry, that person over there will do that. And it changed how that person acted every other time they came in the office then. And it just took me to be brave that once and say, no, I'm not doing it this time. I'm not photocopying something for you. I'm way more senior than half the people in this office. So it just mimicking the fact we do just need to sort of be brave and just say something sometimes to educate people.
Yeah, use your voice. That's such a great anecdote. And I feel like I bet most women on this call have had a similar type situation, the assumption that as a woman, you would be in the most junior role. So thanks for sharing that. Oh, it makes me angry.
I know.
Okay, so next question. For someone starting their career in property, what advice would you give being a woman in property? So Ellie, could I hand that one over to you?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me because I fell into it and sort of didn't plan it. But I think going back to what Hannah said is the first thing I think you need to do is, well, it's sort of two double pronged, but one is to seek out those companies which are sort of most aligned with your values and your politics and your ethics, because actually there's lots of, certainly in a estate agency, there's you know, you've got one end of the spectrum is sort of your kind of very conventional male dominated kind of corporate, hugely visible, sort of your Savills and your Foxtons, and you know, it's going to be a kind of 9-to-5 job, commission based, having to work every Saturday, getting it at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably highly inflexible. And then you've got sort of tiny little independents at the other end of the spectrum, and then everything in between. And actually it's possibly the same in those other industries within property, though I wouldn't want to talk about those. But in a estate agency, I think it's about seeking out what's going to be a good fit for you, because otherwise it's not going to work out and you're going to be really, really unhappy. And I think you know, there's a self-employed business model within a estate agency now that's very popular. There's a big new wave of agencies like Brickworks and the Modern House and Mr. and Mrs. Clark. So just make sure you do tons and tons of research, and actually don't imagine that there's only one way to skin the cat. You can find probably a like-minded agency somewhere in the country that's going to be aligned with you, so that you can kind of move forward as a person and grow as a person in terms of all the things that really matter to you fundamentally, but also within your career. If you're trying to bash yourself square peg round hole, it's just not going to work. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was to find yourself a mentor. Now I hear that is easier said than done, and certainly when I started it was really, really slim pickings. I was like, there must be a woman somewhere who has done this before me, you know. They're few and far between. Actually, I ended up, my first mentor was a man. He just was a man who shared my politics and values, and also wanted to see the same diversity and inclusion and change within industry. So that was sort of that was really good for me, because it kind of like shook my own preconceived notions. I was expecting that I had to have a female mentor in order to do what I wanted to do, and actually I didn't. And then I did find an estate agency trainer who was a woman who was incredible. In estate agency, we're lucky enough to have an organisation, charitable organisation called Agents Together, run by Sarah Edmondson, who's pretty formidable. And they basically pair mentors and mentees. So it's really, and again, as Beth said, it's that community. If you can find, it's difficult to find, like they can be a bit deeply buried within property, but it's like searching. I can see there's somebody here who I found, Natalie Barton, but you know, there's probably only 3 or 4 or 5 within 8 years that you know, people who really connect with, I've really connected with, that they do exist. So it's just like keep trying finding those people, because it's those allegiances and alliances that I think are keep you going.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad you brought up mentorship. That's yeah, that's a biggie. And I think, you know, by doing things like this is how we can form networks and you know, locate mentors and help others. Liz Marsh has just popped in the chat that she's a surveyor and has been in the property industry for 37 years. And one piece of advice she would offer is not to worry if your career is not a straight line up the ladder from school to managing partner. It might zigzag, it might squiggle. When you have family, take time out, study, whatever, it's okay. Don't stress and do what is best for you. And I know we've already touched on that about women coming back in. And also we talked a little bit about it not necessarily being linear. And also, Ellie, you touched on, you know, recruitment not being that straight up, starting at the bottom. And so that was really interesting. Thanks for that, Liz. And thanks for your comments, Ellie. So next question. A real short and snappy, what keeps you motivated in your role? So Lida, if I pop that over to you.
I'm not known for being short and snappy, Zoe, but I will try. Okay, so impact on the individual, getting them one step closer to their goal really motivates me. Personally, developing my own new skills, constantly learning, particularly in relation to leadership. It's something that I listen to audiobooks when I'm in the car. Like I will like engage in conversations, whether in work or outside work, with other leaders in other businesses. Really, really enjoy that. And that motivates me because it's adding to my skill set. I'm a learner. I love to learn. And then the other thing is being inspirational and being the conduit for change. So, you know, we can only be the change that we seek, right? So you see that you see it over Instagram and on quote cards and stuff like that, but actually like getting into it, what it actually means is, you know, it stops us judging others, it encourages self-reflection, and you know, it stirs us into action. So yes, I want to be a conduit for change, but I want to speak up and feel like I don't like feeling uncomfortable at all. Like I spoke up in a meeting fairly recently and called somebody out on language that was used that I thought was derogatory towards women. And I did it. It was awful. Like the feeling that I felt inside was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've spoken to somebody who is more senior than me. And I've told them that was not appropriate and maybe I shouldn't have done it. And, you know, I worried about it so much. And then a few hours later, I was like, no, that was the right thing to do. And yes, everybody laughed in the room. I'm not judging everybody for laughing in relation to the comment, but actually, because people laugh awkwardly, they're like, oh, I don't really know what to do here. But I called it out. So I'm like, okay, it's done now. So yeah, I want to influence others to do that as well. And I think one of the best ways that we can do is, we haven't really touched on it, but there is this it's not industry specific again, but women can have quite a bad reputation against other women because we're trying so hard to gather those male characteristics and be less womanly, for want of a better word. And like, why do that? Like, actually support your women. Like if you see someone like and they're doing a good job, like give them a pat on the back, like say, yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, or like you're doing a great job, like just keep going. Like we should be encouraging each other all of the time, because well, why not? Why wouldn't you? Why would you be like, oh, look at what she's wearing, or oh, I don't agree with her, or like you cannot agree with someone but then bitching about it. Like, no, like this is a sisterhood. If we want to succeed as a group of women, let's have each other's backs. You know, You don't have to agree with everything that everybody's saying, but then get into a conversation with that person about it. Don't have the meeting after the meeting and talk about it afterwards. Like, let's have the conversation at the beginning.
Yeah, that what a great story of you calling him out in that meeting, and exactly what you just said. You could have waited, you could have had a meeting after the meeting to talk about it, but you just called it out there and then. And I know what you mean about feeling awkward, but that's the only way we're going to make the change that, you know, needs to happen. And I totally agree about the whole empowering women thing. I feel so strongly about that, and that's one of the core values of Jobs for Women. You know, we have to look after each other. And I guess it's such an interesting topic, and we could get, you know, go into it in such great depth, the reasons why women might behave in that way, like you said, trying to be less womanly or whatever it is. It's really interesting. So thanks for sharing that, Lida. Great answers. I'll try and get through we've got a few questions, but we'll just get through what we can. So have you ever considered a change in career or leaving the property industry entirely? And if so, what encouraged you to stay? So Beth, I'll hand that one over to you.
Yeah, so I have definitely considered leaving the property industry, and it was actually really, really early in my career. So it was as I was graduating. So I did a sandwich degree, so I'd done a year out working, so I'd already had a bit of a flavour for how I might be received as a female in sort of a more male dominated environment. So I was, at the time, it was a maintenance type role. So it was quite male dominated, and obviously my team were all men, and then the consultants and the contractors that I was working with were all men. And I think I'd been catcalled on a few building sites and stuff, and I just got to the end of my degree and I thought, do I really want to kind of continue this? It feels like an uphill battle, you know. Do I want to keep trying to do this, or is there something that might be a little bit easier or, you know, less challenging because I'm a female? And also, well, I kind of looked into doing sort of an area management graduates scheme with one of the big pub companies, because the teams were more diverse. So it was probably 50-50 male-female split, and I thought that might be a good route for me. Ultimately, I decided against it because I was pursuing it for the wrong reasons. You know, I'd just finished a surveying degree and I'd done really well in it, and, you know, to then not throw it away, but then to chop and change my mind just because certain people were trying to kind of dent my confidence a little bit. I just thought no, and I dug in and stayed with property, and I'm really pleased that I did, because obviously I wouldn't be in the role that I'm in now. And, you know, I've got to meet some fantastic people doing this, and some incredible women who have shown me actually that there are ways and means of getting around this. You know, even just the stories that have been shared today, there are so many opportunities to kind of stop this sort of behavior, so that, you know, girls coming forward into the industry don't have to face those sort of internal questions like, can I do this? Yeah, you definitely can. It's them that needs change. It's not really you. So yes, I have thought about it, but no, I stuck with property.
Oh, that is, it's interesting that it was early on in the career when you just probably thought, what is going on? Like, can I do this? Well done for sticking it out, because look at your success, and, you know, even better things are coming. So our next question, we've already touched on mentorship. Have you had a mentor? So if anyone's got anything else to add on that, I might skip past that. Hannah, have you ever had a mentor? Oh no, we talked about that, didn't we? You're now
couldn't find one.
Yeah, I didn't really have one, no. But luckily, similar to Ellie's story, a male who was a line manager for me was really pushing me to do what I needed to do. So I was quite lucky in that sense that, yes, I might not have had a female mentor, but my line manager at the time was great with pushing me. But it would have been nicer to have someone in more of a senior role sort of mentor me, but no, yeah.
Okay, fab, thank you. And we're going to touch on gender pay. I mean, should we just launch right straight into it? Thoughts on gender pay gap, Ellie?
Oh God,
I know. Can we do
Where
it?
to begin? It's so demoralising. What Beth reminded me though, when she talked about International Women's Day, about the International Women's Day this year, when somebody set up, again from their bedroom, the algorithm, which was the gender pay gap bot. Did you all see that? Whereby when these large companies were kind of like rolling out all these platitudes about International Women's Day and how wonderful their female workforce were, and their mothers and their sisters and their daughters. And then this algorithm came out which just automatically gave their gender pay gap of the same company. It was like, quick delete, and there was all these sort of tweets being deleted and LinkedIn social posts being deleted and stuff, because actually really it was just skin deep, it was just lip service, and it was just tokenism. And I think that's often the issue when we touch on these subjects of diversity and inclusion. It's lip service. It's not really meaningful, and that's why the grassroots stuff, these small things that we're doing habitually, are the things that are actually really going to kind of get the snowball going, because it's Lida going, look, okay, this is hugely uncomfortable, I think I'm going to probably throw up, but I'm going to say something because I know I've got, it's like this internal obligation, because you know that it's for sort of the greater good, and it might make you feel uncomfortable as an individual. That's the stuff, not, you know, the kind of banner waving of these kind of big corporates, which has just proven to be by things like the gender pay gap bot, that it's just it's inauthentic. You know, it's really difficult because of course things got worse because the government stopped the mandatory reporting of the gender pay gap during COVID. Some people just sort of like were very loosey-goosey at that. I think some people did it kind of 18 months later. There were some companies that met the deadline. There were some companies that sort of like met the deadline at midnight on the day. You know, it was just the message was, this isn't actually that serious. The message was, this isn't actually that important, which is hugely disappointing, because of course it's got to come from central, it's got to come from the top down. Again, the way that I have dealt with it is just by calling it out, do the research. I mean, it's all public information, you know, I think, you know, it's there. So I think, as uncomfortable as it might be, if you work for one of these large agencies, for example, one of these large companies, like find out what their gender pay gap is. Just find it out, have it up your sleeve in your annual review, really politely say, because looking at the research, and I realised that our gender pay gap here is X. What sort of systems are you putting in process to address this and make sure that as a company we narrow that? It's an open-ended question, it's totally legitimate, and it's based on fact. And then I think you just you're not coming from a sort of place of being emotional about it, which is, you know, something that we can be called as a, you know, in a pejorative way, but you're coming about it from a serious professional perspective. And it's open-ended. And then the ball is in the court of that person to say, well, what we're doing is this. And if they don't have the answer, you have to press for an answer.
That's a great piece of advice to people, you know, to women across the UK, because the information, as you say, it's readily available, and
it's not subjective opinion. It's not subjective, like it's actually there, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is we just all need to be talking about it all the time, you know. And obviously the pay gap and equal pay are slightly different things, but correlated. And, you know, how much is the person sitting next to you earn? You know, have these conversations, make sure that you're talking within the workplace about it all the time. Like, you know, your story at the beginning, Zoe, of somebody sort of dragging you into the stairwell and saying, you know, be sort of on, you know, internally sort of be on high alert in terms of your own awareness, and be informed. Like, the more informed and educated you are yourself about these things, the more kind of articulately you can speak about it and ask those questions within your workplace.
We're really well said. Thank you for that. So we're going to try and finish, because we'd said it 11 till 12, but I just wanted to touch on something that Hannah had brought when we were chatting before the webinar about skills shortage crisis in construction, and how I know the fact it used to be 11%. I read something recently that said 14%, but, you know, still really low. You know, 14% of the workforce in construction are female. Is this why, you know, can we talk about why this is the case? And do you think we can ever eradicate this preconception that, like you said, Hannah, it's like outdoor men, women not allowed kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different roles, a massive wide variety of roles that would suit so many different people. And I think it is, people aren't aware of them. I mean, I certainly wasn't growing up. I didn't know. People I work with now, they could be design managers, planners, quantity surveyors, project managers. None of those roles were ever taught at careers sort of age or pre-university. So, and similar to some of the roles I've seen from some of the panel members, you didn't learn about that, or you didn't know they existed. So I think letting people know of the opportunities out there for them so they can pick a career that best suits them. And it's not just they disregard any construction or property careers straight away because they've been told or society's told them it's not for them. It's sort of changing that mindset and researching what is in those industries. And I'm pretty sure because of the wide variety of roles available, there'd be something to suit everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so education, and also like we talked about role models, it's like when you see the imagery, the marketing, whatever it is, whatever college it's, you know, if it's always a guy, then it's going to keep the stereotype alive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exactly that. It's like what sort of small ways can we start busting those reductive stereotypes? Like, what does that look like? And again, you know, that's just about increased visibility in these particular, and that can be, as you say, as simple as like marketing and advertising and making deliberate and proactive changes to do something differently so that that information is being received in a different way as well.
Yeah,
I think unfortunately we have, like, no one's going to do it for us, right? So
yeah,
we have to be those drivers of change. And I think so, you know, it's getting into like speaking to maybe your business or doing something off your own back, or you know, working with a company like Jobs for Women and saying, okay, should we get into the schools? Should we put a group of women together into schools to speak to, you know, all the boys and all of the girls and be like, this is what I work in and this is what I do? Because, like, you know, from the building blocks of Lego when you're a kid, like, I think I would have really enjoyed playing with Lego as a kid, but it was never put forward with, like, for me to do. Like, it would have been really good for me, like, but you know, the toys that you give your children, or I mean, I don't have my own children, but you know, the toys that you gift to other people's children as well, like, thinking about that. And
they're
just
shaping
talking
people, aren't they? They're shaping people from such a small age and sort of isolating their options from being a child, really. That's what it's doing.
It starts so young and it's so deeply ingrained in our society. You know, you go to the toy section, or even like there was that brilliant meme which is like the toothbrush section, and there's like loads of toothbrushes that are like blue and green, and they've all got like dinosaurs and transformers on them, and there's loads of pink and purple toothbrushes, and they've got fairies and unicorns. It's ridiculous. And that's like starting when they're 4, so of course they're not going to think that going into construction is something that a girl can do. So it's frustrating, but Lida, you're right, we've got to be the drivers of our own change. And again, it's just having these conversations and talking about it, and also not sort of defaulting to that kind of, well, it's always been this way and so that's fine. Like, when stuff has become normalized, we stop noticing it or being shocked by it. We're just desensitized by it. Like violence on television, we're desensitized to what the norm is. Like walking into a room and saying, hi gents, we just sort of think, oh, can I be bothered to call, you know, because it's normalized, and we just go, you know, the path of least resistance. And I think it's about taking the path of most resistance. You know, this is the harder path, and I'm going to deliberately do it because the toothbrushes all shouldn't be blue and pink.
A great example in construction is a lot of the workplaces, they can be, construction sites are temporary, so they have temporary welfare facilities. Now, I implement this on every single site I'm on, but because there's no female operatives out on site, they won't put a female toilet out on site. So it's kind of, you're creating a barrier before.
Yeah, you've even begun.
Opportunity to, and simple things like not providing sanitary bins in the toilets for ladies, or using them as clean as storerooms. That sort of attitude and stuff like that needs to change to allow people to enter the industry. It's crazy. It happens all the time. Yeah, and I have to say something. You have to say, no, it's not right. What if I wanted to go out on to site and there's nowhere for me to go to the toilet? It's just bizarre.
You've just
And they're
reminded me there, Hannah.
they're almost invisible, aren't they? And so
Yeah.
when you have a really good tangible example like that, that is the tangible stuff you have to change in order to change the culture, because the culture is the stuff that's invisible.
Mhm.
You just sort of reminded me of something there, Hannah, right? So I attended a networking event recently, and it wasn't like it was in a proper event space, and the organisers had obviously acknowledged that there would be far more men attending the event, and it was really geared up towards men. It was a property networking event, and they'd closed off the female toilets. There were physical toilets on the same level as where the event was being held. They closed off the toilets, put a big sign on it saying men's toilets. So they had 2 sets of men's, and I had to go down a level to find the ladies' toilets.
Oh.
Even though there were provisions there, they'd put it just made
like
it
a
more
metaphor.
obvious the men didn't have to queue. Like,
Oh dear.
what is going on?
Crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's
But all
terrible. Wow.
of these anecdotes are really important, and this is the thing about, there's so much kind of quantitative research, but all this qualitative research is stuff that is equally, if not more important, right? And what's interesting about our business is that it's set up by me and my husband. We founded it, we're equal shareholders, 50-50, we're paid exactly like everything, we're a sort of beneficial starting point because everything is equal. At least 3 or 4 times I've been mistaken for his PA.
Oh
Can I
my gosh.
actually talk? Can I actually talk to the director? That sort of. And again, often people are sort of mortified or put out when you sort of say, well, actually, you can talk. But the fact that assumption is made in the first place. Anyway, that was me transgressing, going back to what Hannah was saying earlier. But it's all. Yeah.
I can feel the passion and the energy. It's great. Yes. So a few people have had to jump off. So we'll definitely start to wrap up now, unless there's anything else. I did really want to finish on a positive, because I think we are strong, amazing women. So can you tell me one thing that you love about your job? You don't even need to go into the whys, but is there one thing that when you wake up every day, you're like, aha, this is my thing? So Beth, let's go with you.
Do you know, it's not really something I wake up every morning and think, oh, that's amazing. But I definitely feel the business that I'm working in now, I am respected for my opinions because of my experience. And I can honestly say that isn't something that I've had in other roles, in other businesses. So that's something that I feel now kind of re-energized and refreshed to keep doing what I'm doing, and, fighting the good fight and trying to do it, for future people coming into the industry. So yes, that's my one love about my current job.
Love that. Hannah, should we go to you?
Yeah, I think mine is just the variety. So one morning I'll wake up, go to work, and I'll be drafting a legal contract for a subcontractor or for a client. And then the next day I'll be in my hard hat and boots and trailing through some mud on a site. So I think for me, I get bogged down if I'm having to do the same thing over and over again. So having that variety available in my career is great, because it satisfies me and keeps me motivated each day. So yeah,
I love that. I like the variety. That's great. Lida, should we jump over to you?
Just having the ability to support and manage people and help them get better in whatever way they ask for my help. And having that direct line management and influence, which is something that I've not had working in previous businesses.
Yeah, I'm really getting that from you. I bet you're an amazing manager, like the way, listening to audiobooks and stuff. It is so important though. Like I always remember the best managers. You just never forget them, the ones that supported you and, helped you and guided you. Thanks, Lida. And then finally over to Ellie.
The job itself of being an estate agent just means you're sort of facilitating people at kind of a life-changing moment to move home. And that's like everyone moves house if you're lucky enough to be renting or own a property. And it's always at an emotionally important time as well. So And there's a sort of joke that we're a bit like therapists, but it's either divorce or death, or you're getting married, or there's a job relocation or a lifestyle change, or you've just had a baby. And that's actually, that facilitation is hugely rewarding. But in terms of my role, it's being part of an industry that's so behind that actually radical change is really needed. And so being instrumental in that and sort of galvanizing people and meeting like-minded people in order to move things forward, that's the thing, that sort of intellectual kind of meat on the bones of it is what keeps me going as an individual, because it's just exciting when something's got a really long way to come, right? That's exciting because you've got to sort of be part of dragging it.
Yeah, I love that you sort of like therapists. It's true, isn't it? It's so true. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. Thank you to the panel. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute. I know loads of people have had to jump off. We have gone a little bit over. I did originally say 11 to half 12, but then I was thinking we need to be, you know, people are so busy, aren't they? So yeah, just want to say thank you to the panel for giving us their time, their expertise, their experiences, sharing those anecdotes. Honestly, it was so fascinating. Thank you to everyone that's joined us today. Let's do it again. Let's keep talking. Let's network. Let's share our stories. Let's be part of the change. And yeah, let's connect. Chat to me, email me. We'll connect on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Nat. Thanks for being here. Anything else for anyone from the panel left to say?
Just thanks for hosting, Zoe.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
going to use Hannah's. So I was going to say, I'm going to use Hannah's story about the ladies. Like literally, I'm going to wheel that out every time.
Yes. This is the best. The anecdotes. This is what
I can give you
happens.
20 more if you want.
Yeah,
We'll do it
exactly
again.
that.
We'll do it again.
Exactly that.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a brilliant day, and we will speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Zoe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.